We'll need 205 new podcast subscribers this week alone to get on track to reach 10,000 by the end of 2011 and thus survive into 2012 and continue the mission of bringing in-depth, long-form, informative, interesting cultural conversation to the public radio airwaves, to the iPod earbuds, and so far beyond as well. You want to help out? Sign up for the Marketplace of Ideas mailing list and find out more at colinmarshallradio.com. That is colinmarshallradio.com. Click the Marketplace of Ideas logo, and you'll find instructions on how to join the mailing list right there on the front page. Thanks. As a man devoted to late 70s, early 80s funk, soul, R&B, I mean, that's kind of what I've been into. I got really excited about, 8 bars in. The first time I heard that song, I was like, oh, here we go. So you have to tell me, what's your relationship to that type of music? Because I know you got to have one.
Well, my dad's black. That might be the big big one for me. Like, he really got me into black music. Growing up as, you know, a multicultural family, I was exposed to a lot of different things musically. My dad had like a lot of really cool records that really got me into that. I remember just being like a weird little kid and like these Ohio player record covers, and just like wondering why are these like almost naked women like on these like, record covers. My dad would like play them for me just to show me like it's like weird, it's really good music. And I was just like, oh, cool. I didn't realize how awesome it was until I was like, you know, old enough to appreciate music. I think that's where it started. My interest in music came from my family.
From KCSB in Santa Barbara and Colin Marshall Radio, I am Colin Marshall, by the way, and this is the Marketplace of Ideas. I'm speaking with Chaz Bundick, the founding member and frontman of Toro y Moi, and the musical project has brought out last year the album Causers of This, and this year, Underneath the Pine, a brand new one. We heard, of course, the single New Beat at the top of the show. And, you know, you heard the Ohio Players. What else? I want to know just briefly what other groups you heard, you know, played by your dad or whomever in childhood. I promise I'm not gonna stay on this late 70s R&B stuff forever, but I got to know the details.
Oh. Yeah, they also got me into Prince. I remember they had like they had this Prince poster when I was growing up, and
your parents had a Prince poster?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was my dad's. It was really cool. It had a Prince with like his gang standing behind him, and they were like all standing in like shiny sequin things. I remember I was also confused about that, and then my dad also played me Prince's music, and I was like, dumbfounded again. But yeah, it was really cool.
There is, I mean, when you run into the kind of music that you really love as a kid, there is dumbfounded is a good word, because you're like, what's going on here? And there's sort of like, I've got to figure this out. There's that impulse as well. Like, when did you start thinking, I got to know why this appeals to me so much?
I knew that when I first started exploring music myself, it wasn't that genre or that era of music. It was more like angsty teen, rock and hip hop. So like, I think I really started appreciating those genres around like high school. So
angsty teen rock and hip hop.
I wanted to get weirder
because we're about the same age. So that angsty teen rock and hip hop, I mean, that was the thing when we were kids, right? There wasn't really a place for the Princes of the world or the Ohio Players of the world necessarily, right?
I think that's where it came from, like the finding more music and finding weirder music sort of just resulted in going to further back in the catalog,
Right.
So, yeah, when I got tired of finding more obscure contemporary bands, I went back in time and just listened to more music from earlier.
Now, from what I've read, Underneath the Pine was originally conceived as a folkier follow-up to Causers of This, which was, of course, more electronic sounding. But how did the idea of a folkier record metamorphose, you could say, into what Underneath the Pine is now that it's released?
All of my songs really start off with, either piano or drums. It's hard to tell or say what they're going to sound like in the end. So when I was thinking about what I'm going to try to do and how it's going to turn out, like, I was trying to think of a good segue, not make it such a dramatic jump where it was just like turning people off to the music. I ended up exploring cosmic funk and jazz and sort of that area of Causers, and sort of decided to make that kind of music. And I thought that would make people interested in Causers sort of interested in my more live performance albums. So that's where those sort of ended up.
Now, what do the two albums, Causers and Underneath the Pine, what do they have in common to your mind besides the fact that you're the one driving them?
the idea of having funk and soul influence, a pop element. I wasn't sure what I was going to try to do, but I tried to make sure that those were the main characteristics of the albums that would link the two together, even though they're so different.
Now, what does pop mean to you? It's such a broad concept, and it means different things to different people. So, when you're thinking about pop elements, what are you thinking about?
I think accessibility, really.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I feel like when I hear like an Animal Collective song, it's not crazy obscure. Like, it's catchy, and I like it, and I can roll with it, and it's really good. I feel like just because it doesn't have the standard verse chorus template, I think that it can still be a pop song.
It is funny with the approaches that different people have had, the ways that different people received Causers. Some said, "Yeah, this is a definite pop album. This is a totally accessible pop album," and others said, "Wow, this is an experimental album." Like, what do you chalk that up to? That range. I mean, I consider it almost experimental pop, which is good because it unites two things that I like.
Right.
But what do you make of the fact that people react differently?
I think that's what I sort of want out of people is to confuse them. But yeah, again, make sure like I'm gaining their attention. It's great, I guess, to go that route. Experimental pop is what I would call it too.
Nice. I'm glad to get some validation because that's what I've been calling it. I'll say there's this album you got to listen to. It's by Toro y Moi. I'll say maybe experimental pop, experimental R&B, or what have you, and that maybe gets it across. Ultimately, you just kind of have to hear it. But I want to get an idea of sort of the roots of this, because from what I've read, a lot of especially the songs on Causers, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they had some origins in you recording by yourself, listening, making something that'll sound good through your own headphones, essentially, like working on something that you're going to like. Does it take more to make that into something accessible? Or is the stuff that pleases you, does that also just happen to be accessible stuff?
Nice. I don't know. It's really hard to say. I know when I was making Causers, I was working through headphones all the time because I was trying to avoid pissing off my roommates by just letting them hear the songs over and over. But yeah, a lot of times for Causers, I was recording in an intimate space in an enclosed environment, and like everything was very close. With this album, I got a chance to actually have instruments playing around, leave them set up, and I was just able to walk around and play different instruments wherever they need to go. It was sort of a challenge to get sort of message across for this album. That was a hard question.
Right. We ask the tough questions here, but I think that's a good answer. And I want to get an idea as well of what the album form is to you, because it seems like albums do matter to you, like the album as a unit. It's not Causers is not just a collection of songs. They are blended together, and there's through lines through all of them. And Underneath the Pine is more traditional, but it's still a cohesive album. I mean, what is an album to you besides a bunch of songs on a disc or that you buy at once off of iTunes?
I'm one of the last generation for MP3s, and so I was really into full albums growing up, and like really enjoying them as they are as a whole. So that influenced me when it came to having to make albums. Albums to me are sort of, I feel like all the songs should have something unnoticeable really glue all of the songs together. I think that could be anything from a particular singing style or a particular drum miking technique, like something pretty subtle that wouldn't constrain you, fit your approach. So I feel like albums should really go wherever they want, but it's always nice to have some sort of glue. I think for this album, I was going for a 70s analog vibe, without being like too much the recording technique. It's the only thing I was looking for to hold the songs together. The fact that they were so soft, almost, and not as hard hitting as most current day recordings, but like that was enough to keep the songs related. And so like Causes of this totally took a different approach and just made all the songs sort of feed into each other and make you sort of listen to the whole album. Because if you listen to the songs by themselves, you'd hear something that would just make you want to wonder what was before that song or what's coming up after. And yeah, I just sort of missed listening to the whole album.
Now, I want to know more about the way, as you said, you made Underneath the Pine sound more analog, the recording techniques you use. I mean, how far did you go with getting an analog sound? Were you at some stage of the game using analog gear, or were you just going for the type of sound analog recordings had, or what did you do?
Yeah, I don't have any high-quality analog recording gear. My 4-track sounds like butt. So I did, I was recording digitally, but I with the drums, really, I had like 3 microphones on the drums, 6 and overhead. And a lot of the things, mic with one thing. I don't really know any other way to mic something, but like when it came to going to this, mixing it, I took it to the studio. And we actually got to like run it through analog processing equipment, and it was really nice to use like analog delay and all that stuff. That really helped out with the ideas.
There's something you were talking about in some other interview about the recording of Causers, and you were saying that you'd as you said about both the albums, you'd let it go where it went, but you would also have to periodically, say, re-record all the vocals on the whole thing to sort of bond the whole project together again. Were there equivalent techniques on Underneath the Pine where you just had to keep refreshing the whole thing in a sense at once so it would be cohesive?
Yeah, I did all the vocals again in like the same week. Like I just pretty much sort of saved myself the time having to go back and do that, because I guess I sort of learned from the last decade. Get all of my final like bounce mixes, and then just sort of just hold them until it's time to do vocals. So that way I don't have to worry about my voice changing over time or my mic acting weird at a different time or something. I don't know. But, yeah, I would do that. I would just save songs and sing them all at the same time. Or I got a Rhodes during recording, so I did go back and sort of find a good spot for Rhodes in a lot of songs. And then some of them I just made the Rhodes the main for the primary instrument you hear.
And that's something important, because I as an interviewer, I don't take a lot of write a lot of questions beforehand, but on my notepad here, I just have Rhodes written in caps and underlined with a question mark beside it. I wanted to know if that was real. I wanted to know what was going on with it. And I was going to ask you about it later, but I'll do it now. You know, what are your feelings on the kind of sounds that a Rhodes makes, or that electric pianos of that type make in general? I mean, what does that give music?
I think it gives it a whole new characteristic. If you get Rhodes, you will get into jazz. It's like inevitable. I feel like every time I put my hands on the Rhodes, if I play a bad note, it sounds good on it. For some reason. It just sounds like a beautiful blue notes all over. But like if I do it on a piano, it just sounds awful. It's weird, but yeah, I love Rhodes. That was like one of the best things I ever bought.
And those things are not easy to come by, are they? I mean, you have to put out some effort to get one of those, right?
Yeah, I found it in Knoxville, Tennessee. And we were playing a show. It happened to be the last show of our U.S. tour. Yeah, we were like coming home from Caribou tour, and like we were like driving down, and we had one show. It was in between the last show with Caribou and home, and we were like headlining and stuff. So next door there was this music shop, and I saw it, and it was a really good price. It was like $1,100 or something, and I was like, okay. I just kept seeing it like throughout the day, and it was just tempting me, and I bought it. And my girlfriend happened to be there, so I made it, put it in her car.
And I have to imagine that then was one of the, was just the ownership of that instrument something that shaped how Underneath the Pine turned out?
Yeah, I guess you could say that for sure. It really led to a lot of the sounds, was exploring all of these like new tools and toys. Like I got a synthesizer not too long before the recording. I really didn't get a chance to touch it because I was touring all the time. So recording was the only chance I got to sort of make new sounds with it. And a lot of those are the main synth sounds you hear.
Now, you mentioned before that recording an album, you kind of let the album go where it needs to go. So where did Underneath the Pine sort of take you along with it? I mean, where did it start going as soon as you started working on it?
Well, I was really influenced by a lot of film music.
Right.
I decided to sort of explore that area more. And just being interested in that, I think that it really challenged my musical taste. I never thought I'd be into instrumental music. Never thought I would find instrumental music that appealed to me. Yeah, I think that's what really got me. Now I really want to score film.
It's funny because listening to Underneath the Pine, it's, I think of your two albums, Causers of This and Underneath the Pine, as I think of them as two very different environments to quote unquote be in when I'm listening to them. They create a very distinct feeling like I'm in two different places. And the atmosphere of Underneath the Pine, I was searching for a way to describe it when I was talking to someone about the album. And all I could really say was, there is the element in there of like, I don't want to say of film score type music, but there is the atmospheric element that you associate with films. I take it I'm not too far off base when I say that.
Yeah. No, that's great.
And did you even know you were doing it, I guess? I mean, I've heard that you were listening to film music in the run up to recording this, but are these things ever conscious? Do you say, I kind of want to get a film feel to this? I mean, it sounds almost ridiculous to say it, but how conscious is that?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to start. I mean, like I wanted to make film music and then try to sing on top of it. Some of them felt good as instrumentals. A lot of them worked really well as instrumentals, and then some of them they work better without vocals. So the ones that are instrumentals were just ones where I felt like vocals weren't really needed.
So what kind of imaginary movie does Underneath the Pine soundtrack? I mean, how would you imagine a movie that had this as its score?
I guess if it had to be, it'd probably be, I guess, a rom-com. Let's say a romantic comedy.
But not a normal rom-com. It would have something different about it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there's something a little bit off. There's some seriousness seriousness.
I want to stay on this idea of romance with a little something off, because when I'm listening to the lyrics of Causers or of Underneath the Pine, that's kind of how I think of it. I mean, if you listen to a lot of pop music, and it's all about love in pop music, and in R&B, it's really all about love, But listening to your albums, it's like you kind of expect the lyrics to go one way, but they surprise you by kind of going a little different way. I mean, did you have it in your mind that you didn't want to sing about this stuff in the normal way, or was it just kind of like this how it came out?
Yeah, I tried to change up the way I do lyrics a little bit. I don't know if I found a good formula yet, but for a lot of the earlier stuff I would write about, like relationship problems. And for this one, I tried to explore areas of just talking about friends and family, or how I could become a better person. I feel like I learned how to do that with touring. I feel like touring really helped me sort of realizing how special things were when I was home, and it was really nice.
If you've just tuned in, this is the Marketplace of Ideas, and I'm Colin Marshall. My guest is Chaz Bundick, the founding member and now frontman of Toro y Moi, the musical project that put out the album Causers of This last year, and has a new one out this year called Underneath the Pine. If you want to hear the show again when it's over, visit colinmarshallradio.com to find the official, complete, always free Marketplace of Ideas interview archive, or go on iTunes, go to the iTunes store specifically and search for the Marketplace of Ideas. There in the iTunes podcast directory, you'll also find the complete, free, downloadable, to your heart's content interview archive. That's colinmarshallradio.com or the iTunes store, where you can find the Marketplace of Ideas. Questions, comments, feedback, whatever you'd like, send that along to colin@colinmarshallradio.com. If you want to be kept up with new Marketplace of Ideas interviews and be able to know what's coming on the horizon and get linked to other internet interestingness, sign up for the Marketplace of Ideas mailing list at colinmarshallradio.com as well. Now back to the conversation with Toro y Moi founding member Chaz Bundick on the Marketplace of Ideas, cultural conversation of the depth you demand. From what I understand, if we're contrasting the lyrics between the first album and the second one, from what I've heard, the lyrics on the first are pretty raw, pretty honest. I mean, not that somebody who doesn't know you or your situation would be able to figure that out from them, but they're ripped straight from your life, as I understand it. And it sounds like the lyrics on Underneath the Pine, they're also ripped from life, but in a totally different way. I mean, was it as, I don't know if hard is the word, but was it as hard a process to talk about the stuff you talk about on the new album as the old one?
It's put it that way. It's not as hard, no. The material I decided to write about was like almost it was like a good opening up. It felt like a good cry, I don't know. It wasn't hard at all to talk about any of that stuff, because it was just me talking about how this is bad, but I'm going to try to fix it.
We're going to hear another cut from Underneath the Pine right now from Toro y Moi, the new album. This cut is called Still Sound. That was Still Sound from Underneath the Pine, the new album from Toro y Moi. I'm talking to the founding member and frontman, Chaz Bundick. Now, that was the first song I heard off of Underneath the Pine before it came out. I think it was the song a lot of people heard because it was released before the album. But it was also, I mean, it was one that got me really excited for the rest of the album. And this is also a Rhodes-heavy composition, is it not?
It is, yeah.
How much of it comes from that? I mean, I want to get an idea of where you started with this song. Like, what's the basic foundation of this song that you started building on?
The song definitely started with Rhodes. I think this was the first one I wrote when I got the Rhodes back in my house.
It does sound like a man excited to have a Rhodes, this song.
That was me exploring a lot of different elements, jazz and pop. I really was having a lot of fun with that one.
And how does the song Still Sound, how does it tie up thematically with what we were just talking about? You know, the things you were thinking about in this album. It seems like it's one of the most direct songs on the album as far as speaking to the sort of ideas. I mean, is that true?
Yeah, that one was mainly about my friends that live out of town. I guess just being in a small town, growing up, and then after school or college, everyone just sort of moves away, does their own thing. It's sort of hard, and then you feel like you're left in town. But then I sort of realized I'm moving around too, just because of tour. I feel like I'm not even living here anymore. So it's kind of a weird situation to be in. But it's mostly about trying to stay in touch and trying to make sure that we have the same relationship, even though there's that distance.
And working in the field you do, where you're on the road a lot, where you have to record a lot, this Toro y Moi has got to be eating a lot of your time. How do you maintain connections?
Skype. I call on the phone more. Yeah, I don't think I've ever used Skype too much more than ever. It's always on now, and I'm always talking to people after shows, when we get home, because wherever we are, I feel like friends are always up and always call pants and stuff.
And it's interesting that, some people call the Toro y Moi sound a kind of a retro sound, but there's ways in which, you talked about using the internet, using Skype as a way to stay connected just in life, but also much has been written about the way that you got Toro y Moi songs out there, which, as the journalists write, was just getting in touch with blogs and emailing them to various types of music communities. Is that actually accurate? Is that how things got rolling? Yeah,
I give a lot of credit to the internet helping me get where I am now. It's really crazy how I sent a few MP3s to a blog and then it snowballed so much.
It seems like I'm not quite sure what concept I'm getting at here, but do you think it sounds like a technique that people would have thought of. You'd think people making music independently would have thought of sending music out to blogs, and maybe a lot of other people did, but do you think the accessibility you try to get in your music had an effect in terms of getting those people to listen up who are writing the blogs, getting them to talk about it? I mean, do you consider accessibility to have been an important part of that whole early spark?
I hope so. I think so. I feel like the pop element in my music is what I like the most. So I feel like if I'm making a good, catchy song, it should have a good response. I was super nervous, emailing those songs out. I was like, what if I don't like them? What if, like, I don't know what I was thinking. I can't, I can't really remember. But I do know I was kind of paranoid when I sent those out. And I was just like, oh no, here goes nothing.
What did you think was going to happen? What was your worst case scenario?
I don't know, like people commenting or something. I just being like, what is this? This is bad or something. I don't know.
And now I want to get a little context here, because from what I've read, at this point you were sending out your songs to blogs. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the end of college was coming up, and you were working in like a bagel shop or someplace, and you were like, "Geez, I got to get something going." Was that about it?
Yeah, it was like right after college, and I left for tour like a month after I graduated or something. So it was really close. The job market's really crappy. And so trying to find a design job on top of that is just even harder. Yeah, I was just sort of like, okay, I got my degree. I guess it's the backup plan. Let's try to focus on music now.
And you mentioned looking for a design job, and you have some background in graphic design as well. What are your how to put it? What are your sort of aesthetic interests beyond music? I mean, your music has a very not specific, but like a distinctive sound to it. But do you also think about aesthetics as they extend beyond music, like obviously into design, but into visual stuff as well? Like, how far? This is going to come out maybe a little bit jumbled sounding as a question, but how far do you take it? Like, do you think about music in a certain stylistic way, then you also think about design and visual art and what have you in a certain stylistic way as well? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah. I think I'm really attracted to different art and mediums that are mostly timeless. I like design that seems to hold up through different decades and doesn't look too dated.
Right.
And I think that's what I like about music too. How you can have a song that sounds like it's from the 80s or 70s, but you're not sure if it was made now. Yeah, it's really fun to play around with that. It's just, but then again, it's ironic how you can just make a 90s song and then automatically it's timeless because you made it now.
I want to link some things up here. We played Still Sound. We talked about Underneath the Pine as the soundtrack, as the score to an imaginary film. And of course, a lot of people have seen the video for Still Sound, because links to that have been passed around. It's on Pitchfork and whatnot. And, the way that video looks strikes me as pretty perfect for the sensibility of the sound, because it's shot in Super 8, and I'm a filmmaker. I use Super 8 a lot myself, so it's like, that's perfect. It has this, I don't know if it was actually shot in the fall, but it has this kind of autumnal look to it. And, it's like you say, you look at it, you say, is this 1970? Is this 1985? Is this 2011? Is this 1994? That's the same quality, right?
Yeah. I really wanted to use Super 8, and Steve Daniels gets the message across perfect with all of his films. He uses only Super 8, and it does a great job. Yeah, when we were trying to make that video, we were just looking for really awesome spots, and it was just sort of a random kind of idea. It was just going to have me in different spots in the city. So I was just looking for all these different spots that sort of timeless and sort of, again, had that same vibe.
It is interesting because the videos for a lot of your songs, not all of them, but a lot of the videos I've seen, conceptually, you think about how they would have been made, and the parts and pieces, the individual parts and pieces seem like hanging out and goofing around and, that kind of thing. And they're the same for the video for Blessa off of Causers. And it becomes put together as something more cohesive, like something a lot more purposeful feeling. And I think the same way, I think you could almost say the same thing about some of your music. Like it sounds so purposeful and driven. And then you look at the individual parts and it just kind of like, they're sort of fun individual parts. Do you know what I mean? That's so vague.
I know, yeah. It's just like I'm just hanging out making music.
But in the total, you're working hard, but each individual part is like this. It almost seems casual in small parts, but very purposeful in the whole. I mean, that's an idea from graphic design and visual art, is it not?
Yeah, I try to have fun when I'm doing it. I don't want to think of music as part of my music career as a job, and I don't want to get jaded with it. I feel like if I get tired with it, then it loses all of like every single element. It's like I don't want to get tired of my hobbies, especially the one that's helping me live. So I try to change it up. If I'm bored with electronic music, I'll go to live instruments. If I'm bored with that, I'll change it up, go back to electronic, and just try to find as many different things that I can do to make it new to me for it all over again.
It seems like with a lot of musicians, complacency is the biggest enemy. Like they find a groove, they lock into it, and they, even if they don't mean to, they run that out for the next 30 years. Is that the number one danger on your radar, is that you might get complacent, and so that's why you got to fight it so hard?
Yeah, that's exactly, like, I don't want to fall into a groove myself personally. Like, I don't want to be like, yeah, I love singing this way, this is how I'm going to sing. Or, I want to try to keep evolving as a musician. That's just my personal goal. I don't want to, no offense, but I'm not trying to do it for like, the people or whatever. I'm just trying to make sure that as long as I'm interested in it first, like, that's a good sign. I don't want to just do it just because I'm obligated.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you listen to some music, you look at some art, you check out some graphic design, and you can always tell if the creator wasn't into it, right? I mean, you can feel that the person doing it is bored, no matter what. You always know, right?
Right. I heard some new songs from some artists, and I was just like, I remember when this band used to be really good. Like, what happened? Like, is it the touring or is it the money that just like makes it easier or something? I don't know. Like, it makes me wonder so much. Like, I hope that doesn't happen to me if I become successful in music. But I feel like because I'm aware of this or something, hopefully that'll save me.
There's awareness, but I mean, let's look at these two albums. Your first two full-length albums, and they're quite different. They're more different than any other first two albums that I can think of. I mean, was there a deliberateness to just sort of effectively saying to the audience, here's my first two, and they're not that similar, but get ready because this is going to be how it is from now on with Toro y Moi?
Yeah, pretty much. That's how it was before I ended up with Car Parts. When they were talking to me about releasing Causes, I was like, well, I sort of do like, I had to give them a heads up. I was like, I'm not an electronic artist. Like, this is just like the first electronic album I've done. Like, is it okay if we like do another one sort of like at the same time that's like not electronic? I have a bunch of live performance recordings too. And they're like, yeah, that's totally a cool idea. I ended up getting Underneath the Pine, but a lot of my stuff before Underneath the Pine, my live performance recordings, they weren't really anything like this. They were more folky or indie rock sort of pop sound. But I felt like I wanted to get the message out there that I'm really into being all over the place. And I don't know, I like versatility.
Now you're touring to support this new album, Underneath the Pine, and there's a difference in the way you've done it before and now? I mean, before, as I understand it, you were playing solo. You had a setup, but you were up there by yourself. Now you're going with a band. I mean, what's the difference besides the obvious that it's more hassle but that you also get the energy of more people on stage? What's the difference for you with these performances where you're not by yourself?
I like the idea of showing people where all the sounds are coming from. I know when I like to see bands, or when I like to see music live, I like to see what's coming from. If it's coming from one source, that's all right. But I feel like it's more engaging, like all over the stage. Like seeing where the beat's coming from, the bass, the rhythm, and the singing and stuff. So that was my main concern. I come from a instrument background, not a electronic laptop background, and I feel like I'm not really giving it my best performance. I'm just on stage with a laptop.
You saw a danger in being seen as a laptop musician?
That's one of the things. I wasn't, because I mean, like, being, I guess, classically trained sort of musician, you don't want to just have all your credibility just knocked down to a laptop way,
Right.
I don't know any other way to say it, but like I guess like that's what some people are thinking. And I mean, like, I want to play instruments on stage, like it's fun. I don't want to just play my songs off of computer and then sort of noodle around with knobs to, I don't want to get smoke and mirrors. Like that's who I am. So yeah, the band came to be, and like it's working perfect.
Now, I want to also get a little more idea of something that's mentioned a lot about you in profiles or articles on Toro y Moi, but it's not really mentioned in a whole lot of detail. We talked about Underneath the Pine having these sort of hometown themes to it, and articles always mention that you come from Columbia, South Carolina, but what's that city actually like?
It's a nice college town. It's a nice southern college town. It's got a lot of things going on when school's in, but when school's out, it's a dead town.
Yeah, as many college towns. Of course, I'm recording this in Santa Barbara, and it has much the same. I mean, there's a lot in common, really. You wouldn't think between the two places. But what was it like growing up in that region of the country?
It was pretty normal. I guess I didn't realize how kind of unnormal or abnormal it was when I left.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, like, the South, like, lives and breathes football.
So I've heard.
Like, I didn't realize it even when I was playing football at, like, 7 and 8. Like, I was like, oh, cool, football. Okay, yeah, sure. Oh, my dad's screaming his lungs out. Why? Because of football. Like, I thought it was completely normal. But sports and football mainly revolves, like, the city revolves around it. Like, they will change, like, they'll have, like, holidays and stuff. It's kind of weird.
And, I also want to know what just the look and feel and maybe vibe is the word of where you grew up. Can you trace any effect on your music to that?
I'm not really trying to play up this, the small town kid in a big city card. Like, I'm not trying to play that. I'm pretty aware of a lot of things, a lot of cities and stuff. It's just I have a lot of pride in. I think it just sort of just took over me, because being in a small town, you sort of are aware of what's going on with everyone in the city, and everybody knows everybody. You see someone every single time you go out. That just gave me a lot of pride, and that just gave me a lot of can't find the word. But yeah, it makes me feel good to be from a small town, and so I'm always thinking about it.
I've been speaking with Chaz Bundick, the founding member and frontman of Toro y Moi. The new album is Underneath the Pine. Chaz, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.
If you'd like to find out more about Chaz Bundick and Toro y Moi, visit TOROYMOI, that is toroymoi.com. If you'd like to hear this conversation again, visit colinmarshallradio.com, where you'll find the complete Marketplace of Ideas interview archive, or get it on the iTunes store if you prefer. Search for the Marketplace of Ideas there, and you'll find the very same thing. All of the conversations from this program free for the download whenever you like. The website of Ben Althouse, the man who produced our theme music, is benalthouse.com, by the way. And if you have any questions, comments, feedback of any kind, guest suggestions, or what have you on the show, email me, Colin, C-O-L-I-N, at colinmarshallradio.com. And if you want updates on current and upcoming Marketplace of Ideas interviews, as well as links to other related internet interestingness, sign up for the Marketplace of Ideas mailing list. You can do that at colinmarshallradio.com. Instructions right there on the Marketplace of Ideas front page. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the Marketplace of Ideas, serving up more cultural conversation of the depth you demand.